This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Houston Police Department has been in the news a lot recently, and unfortunately not for all the right reasons. The infamous Harding Street raid ramped up media attention about allegations of rogue cops whose actions led to the deaths of 2 Houston residents, and there have been other incidents where suspects have been killed by police and are under investigation. These issues and others through the years have led to increasing distrust of police and the system that governs them. Well, now Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner has formed a task force on policing reform made up of 45 people from various sectors of the community. The man tabbed to chair this task force and will lead what will be a challenging effort is Larry Payne, a longtime Houstonian with more than 3 decades in public service, not-for-profit, and educational programs. His book, The Heart of Houston, Lessons in Servant Leadership, focuses on the kinds of people behind efforts taking place in Houston that make this city great. Good morning, Larry. Good to see you.
Good morning, Cambrell. Great to be with you this morning.
What were your first thoughts when you were asked about taking on this task force?
A daunting task, a challenging task, but not an impossible task, and one that I think is important to do for the benefit of all Houstonians.
What do you hope? What are your hopes for its success? I mean, you paint a picture down the road, and there's a success goal there. What does that look like?
I think it's really about meaningful change with the understanding that change comes usually in 3 buckets: short-term, mid-term, and long-term. To be realistic about what is possible and doable within the immediate time frame, what needs more attention, instruction, and specificity to be able to be done in the midterm, and realizing that a lot of this change not only has to take place in Houston, but in Austin, the legislature, for it to be successful, which is perhaps a little longer time frame.
So where do you start? How do you establish priorities to get going?
You start with a clear plan. The charge from Mayor Turner as he formed the Mayor's Task Force on policing reform, is really a clear guide plate to work from. Public sentiment is on our side at this point in the reform movement, so it's important that we follow the steps and procedures necessary to accomplish our goal. Our task is to submit a clear plan of action and submit those to the Mayor to put forward a comprehensive, very coherent plan for transformational change. One that will be reflective, resourceful, robust, one that will allow things to be clearly understood in a transparent way with accountability. And I think it is time to do that in a way that really allows trust from the community, from the Houstonians in their police department, so that we can get back to understanding the policies and procedures of policing as really embedded in understanding about accountability. It really ends up being in every aspect of policing, it's all about accountability.
You know, with 45 people asked to be a part of this effort, it brings to mind the old adage about herding cats. It's likely not to be one of the easiest things. What kind of potential pitfalls do you see along the way with so many people? I guess one of the good things about it is you have so many people from various backgrounds and various viewpoints. That's the good news. The bad news is you have so many people from various viewpoints and various backgrounds. How do you make that work?
Well, we're going to manage our work by, first of all, breaking into tasks into 4 committees, 4 committees with 2 co-chairs each. The committees will be Houston Police Department Policies and Procedures, Community Policing, and the IPOB, which is Independent Police Oversight Board, Body Cameras Criteria and the use for those cameras and the release of the footage of those cameras, best practices and training. And by doing so, we'll then engage each member of the task force in a meaningful way with the work product to be produced by each committee. It is important, Cambrell, as you know, to put this in the proper context. Houston is a majority-minority city. 4th largest city in America. Everybody's looking to us about what we're going to do with police reform. We're getting calls from all over the country. So it is an opportunity to really create a model that will be a blueprint for others to follow in this police reform movement. It is a movement, and I think, therefore, we have to engage all citizens as much as we can. We want to hear from all voices who care to give input around this process, because it is something that we're doing not only for now, for the walking, talking generations, to make life better for them, but also for future generations, for the children to come, for those yet waiting to be born. It is important that we do this in a way that really allows that to happen. We don't want anyone. We don't want the police officer who doesn't make it home for that family to be upset and crying. We don't want the mothers who've been crying over too many tears and too many years now about their sons and daughters coming home or not coming home. We don't want any of that anymore. It is time to realize that we can do better. We must do better. We have to do better. But to do that, You have to have structures, policies, and procedures in place with rigid accountability and rigid measures.
You know, there are a lot of people already who are criticizing this idea that the task force, they say typically they know task forces are things that are set up to say that you set up something, but the reality is that there's probably not going to be an awful lot at the end of the road there. What do you do to make sure that the community has a trust that you want them to have in this process?
Well, like any process, you know, the phrase is you have to trust the process. You have to allow the process to do its work. You have to be very clear on what you're trying to accomplish, which we are. You have to have leadership in the case of this great task force we put together to really dive deeply into what we're trying to accomplish, and understanding that the environment we're working in, the social, economic, political environment is always one that is fraught with all kinds of landmines that you may not even anticipate going into this. But we are committed to producing a quality product that will benefit all Houstonians around this issue of policing reform. And it is one that is really, I think, that is something that we can do, and we, with community support and the community backing, to give us the time to really do our work, and we will produce you the product you're looking for.
The DA announced more charges against police associated with the Harding Street raid. That's just part of one of the reasons this task force was formed in the first place. Do you think those kinds of actions will have an impact on what you guys decide, or is that just one of the many elements that you'll be dealing with on the short term and long term?
When you're dealing with the Houston Police Department, it's no different than dealing with any organization or entity. It is about the system. It is a systematic change you have to do. It is all about the culture. It is all about how you affect and change the culture. You can change behavior, but if you don't change the culture, you're not going to have the long-lasting effect that you're looking for.
Will your organization have any teeth? Will you be able to say stuff like, okay, well, the chief needs to go, or what kind of impact do you think you'll legitimately have, or you're just going to make recommendations and they can be taken or not?
We are making our findings and recommendations to the mayor. We turn everything over to the mayor for his implementation. I know this much, that in the case of the Harding Street raid, you know, that's a pretty clear one. All you got to do is follow the money. And when temptation is there without the proper policies, procedures, oversights, and accountability, you get into what you have. Corruption is really an idea in the minds of those who can get away with it because they know they don't have the proper oversight. So it's all these things. I mean, you have to dig deeply. You have to ask the questions behind the questions.
Right.
That's what I've learned through this process of doing this stuff over the years. You can't take the okey-doke response. You can't take the answer they give you. You have to dig deeper. You have to ask a lot of set of questions with clear understanding that you've already done your homework. And many times you've already done your homework. You know the answer before you ask the question. You're just trying to get the verification so that you know how to take your next steps.
Well,
this is a deep process.
I've known you for a long time, and when I heard that you were named chair, I said, okay, they got the right guy. I look forward to the result, and I know that you're going to do the best you can do, and come back and talk to us about the results once you get there, okay?
We will. We promise to do that, Cambrell. And thank you very much for this morning.
Thank you, Larry.